Awesome and wonderful, and I'm so grateful and thankful for who you are, and that you are faithful, and that you are just, and that you are always available to us. And I give you glory and honor today. I ask that you just be in our presence today, and I humbly ask you, Lord, to go before, Lord Jesus, and just let your word go forth, Lord, and help us with understanding and clarity, knowledge of your word today, Lord, whether it be now or in our second service, that you will just let your presence rest on us and open up our ears and our hearts and our minds today, Lord. We give you glory and honor and praise. Amen. All right. So, Lee, I have a question for you this morning. Why are you here today? All right. Good answer. Miss Miranda, why are you here today? Very good. So we have a purpose in being here today. Well, this morning we're going to talk about the book of Esther. Did you know that the book of Esther is only two in the Bible named for a woman? The other one is Ruth, if you did not know. It is also one of two books of the entire Bible that doesn't actually mention God's name. The other is Song of Songs. And though we don't read God's name in the story, his sovereignty and his loving care is woven throughout the words in the chapters. And it is also set during a time when the Jews suffered much racial hatred. And they had been a minority in Persia for many years at this time. I also find it interesting that if you read the chronological Bible, how they kind of intermix, like when time goes, that Ezra and all them, they kind of intermingle with Esther, right? So, I did all these years, and I'm old, not as old as my husband, but I'm old, and I've been in church for years, guys, since baby, sitting on my mom and dad's laps. And I guess I just never put two and two together that way. And what God's word is so amazing is that you learn things new. If you've come to a point in your life and you're thinking, oh yeah, I know the word, I know God, I know everything. You don't. You have no clue. It's just teeny tiny bits that we know. And God reveals things to us all the time. So, if you haven't guessed, we are going to talk about Esther. And this is why I was getting it mixed up with my little kids. I was looking for crowns for the little kids. Like, no, wait a second. They're talking about Mary and Martha today. Time management. We're going to start with Esther. We're going to start the first chapter of Esther. And I'm just going to do quick little synopses here for a little bit until we get into my main points today. But we need some background history for those of you who have not read Esther. Or maybe you have, it's just been a long time. So Esther chapter 1, we're going to read verses 1 through 3. It says, now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this was Ahasuerus, who reigned over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. In those days when King Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan, the citadel, that in the third year of his reign, he made a feast for all of his officials and servants and the powers of Persia and Media and the nobles and the princes of the provinces being before him. Then we're going to skip down to verses 10 through 12. On the seventh day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagatha, Zethar, and Carcass. Okay, just a side note, I hope these are all men, because I would not want to be a woman and have any of those names. I'm just saying. 7 eunuchs who served in the presence of King Ahasuerus, to bring Queen Vashti before the king wearing her royal crown in order to show her beauty to the people and the officials, for she was beautiful to behold. One more. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command, brought by his eunuchs. Therefore the king was furious, and his anger burned within him. Okay, now we're going to skip down to chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus subsided, he remembered Vashti, what she had done, and what she had been decreed against her. Then the king's servants who attended him said, "Let beautiful young virgins be sought for the king. And the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather all the beautiful young virgins to Shushan, the citadel, and to the women's quarters under the custody of Haggai, the king's eunuch, custodian of the women, and let beauty preparations be given them. Then let the young woman who pleased the king be queen instead of Vashti." And this thing pleased the king, and he did so. So, King Ahasuerus in here is King Xerxes, same person, reigned in power at his palace in Susa, Persia. He had banished Queen Vashti because she refused to come at his order. This made him extremely mad. His eunuchs went, "Oh no, if you let her do this, then all the women are going to rise against their husbands." So they didn't want that, of course. So they banished Queen Vashti, and then the search for another queen went through the region. So that's just a quick version of King Xerxes. Okay, so let's talk about Esther. So we're going to go back to chapter 2, verses 5 through 7. In Shushan, the citadel, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. Kish had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives who had been captured with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. And Mordecai had brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother. The young woman was lovely and beautiful, and when her father and mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. Okay, then we're going to jump to verse 8 through 10. And so it was, when the king's command and decree was heard, when many young women were gathered at Shushan, the citadel, under the custody of Haggai, that Esther also was taken to the king's palace into the care of Haggai, the custodian of women. Now the young woman pleased him, and she obtained his favor. So he readily gave beauty preparations to her, besides her allowance. Then 7 choice maid servants were provided for her from the king's palace, and he moved her and her maid servants to the best place in the house of women. And more, Esther had not revealed her people or family, for Mordecai had charged her not to reveal it. And then we're going to skip down to verse 16 and 17. So Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus into his royal palace in the 10th month, which was the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. The king loved Esther more than all the other women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight, more than all the virgins. So he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. So, if you didn't catch the very beginning of that, Esther was taken from her home during the time when King Nebuchadnezzar took and carried away all the Jews and took over. And she came to live in the palace along with many of the other girls brought into, for the decree was made. Remember that King Xerxes was going to have a new wife, as it were, a new queen, and so she was among all the other women that were taken in. Now, if you remember in the scriptures, it also said that she had found favor. She was lovely. She was beautiful, okay? But she had found favor. If you know, you do not gain favor just by looking beautiful. You can be very, very beautiful and just be crabby and ugly, okay? So we know from that she had found favor from Haggai, who was the custodian of women, that she not only was beautiful on the outside, but she must have had a very beautiful spirit about her to gain favor as such as she did. So God gave her great favor among all that was there, and she soon became queen. So let's talk about Mordecai for a little bit. Back to chapter 2. verse 11. And every day Mordecai paced in front of the court of the women's quarters to learn of Esther's welfare and what was happening to her. And then let's go down to 21 through 23, Elena. And those days, while Mordecai, within the king's gate, two of the king's eunuchs, Bigthan and Teresh, doorkeepers, became furious and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. So the matter became known to Mordecai, who told Queen Esther, and Esther informed the king in Mordecai's name. And when an inquiry was made into the matter, it was confirmed, and both were hanged on the gallows. And it was written in the book of Chronicles in the presence of the king. So Mordecai was a Jew. We read scriptures earlier. He was Esther's older cousin. He had adopted her and raised her after she had lost both her parents. He continued to advise Esther and check on her safety even when she was in the palace. So he had a great love for Esther, making sure that she was taken care of. And as a government official, he reported an assassination plot against the king and saved the king's life, which later caused the king to become aware of his loyalty and his devotion. So we have King Xerxes, or King Ahasuerus, we have Esther, we have Mordecai, now we have the bad guy in this whole story. And his name was Haman. So if we can go to chapter 3, we'll start with verses 1 and 2. After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes who were with him. And all the king's servants who were within the gates bowed and paid homage to Haman, for so the king had commanded concerning him. But Mordecai would not bow or pay homage. And then we'll go down to verse 5 and 6, Elena. When Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow or pay him homage, Haman was filled with wrath. And he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had told him of the people of Mordecai. Instead, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews who were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus and the people of Mordecai. So Haman, the New King James Version doesn't, it explains, but it doesn't. But he was a descendant of King Agag. Maybe it's Agag. Well, it's spelled A-G-A-G. So, he was a king that you wanted to agag, I guess. I don't know. But he was an enemy of Jews, and so I read a little bit of King Ahab because the name sounded familiar to me. And so this was a dude that got away, that should have never gotten away. Saul was supposed to kill King Agag and take everything, but he spared the king's life. So this was an enemy of the Jews for a long, long, long time because of what they had done to him and his people. So Haman is a relative of this King Agag. He was given a seat of honor by the king, but pride and lust for power drove him to hate anyone who would not bow down to him. He was an extremely proudful man. Can you imagine to have so angry and full of, it says, wrath because someone would not pay you homage? That's unfathomable for me to even understand that you would be in that mindset, that you would get so angry because someone did not bow down and give you due respect. When Mordecai refused, he sought revenge not on just Mordecai, because he knew where Mordecai came from, and he knew what his mindset was on the one true God, and so he knew all the Jews were this way, and so he sought to have revenge on all of God's people by devising a plot to kill the Jews, not just Mordecai. So there's your quick history lesson of Esther and your main characters. So today we're going to talk about, how well did they do? Not too bad. 7 powerful truths from the story of Esther. Esther has a lot of wonderful things that we can glean from. So we're going to talk about them a little bit today. First of all, God is the only God who has power to turn trials into blessings. Don't ever doubt that God is not able. Nothing is impossible with him. This story tells of his miraculous work and moving things and people and situations, and sometimes that gets lost on us. We forget, and we are very much people that live in the now or the past. We have a really hard time looking too far into the future. Now, we all probably have 401ks, and we think, oh, yeah, I'm set up. I have 3 401ks from my 3 different jobs. I thought, I really should combine those 3 instead of just having 3 scattered throughout, especially the one company that, well, I'm just glad I'm done with them. But anyhow, I keep getting letters from them telling me about my 401k. But we don't look too far into the future. But God looks way out there. He sees where we are today. He sees where we're going to be in the next second. He sees where we're going to be the next year, 10 years, 20, 30 years. But we never look at that. And we look at our situations, we're like, oh, how, Lord, how? I don't understand. What is going on? Esther had no idea that when she was taken into a foreign land, into foreign cultures, foreign ideas, what God had planned for her. She lost her parents, which was, I'm sure, devastating for her. She was living with a cousin, not even an uncle or an aunt, but she's living with a cousin. So her life is turned upside down completely, and she had no idea what God had planned for her. Things in life hadn't gone Esther's way. We know that she was beautiful and that she must have had a beautiful spirit for her to be found favor. But she was an orphan. She had suffered great loss. She was whisked away from her family, like I said, her culture that she knew, into a totally different and foreign place. Yet, she would be taken into the king's palace, given a load of expectation. So I'm sure Mordecai, when it was announced that all these women would have to report to the king, right? But Mordecai gave her some really good advice. Don't tell people who you are. Now, that's really hard for a lot of us, not to tell somebody who we are, especially if we're kind of proud of our heritage. So I'm Norwegian and Swedish. My dad always denied the Norwegian part, but we're Swedish. My grandfather came from Sweden when he was 7 years old on a boat to New York with his siblings, his half-siblings, and his dad and mom. So it's very hard a lot of times for us to keep our mouths shut. But Mordecai told her, do not tell anyone who you are and where you're from. She was gifted with a royal position, but there was still incredible hardship. Now, we think, oh, yeah, queen, lovely, waited on hand and foot, right? But still, she was still a Jew in a foreign country, and she had to keep her mouth shut. Her people faced great tragedy and destruction, and surely she had to feel very alone. She was the only one in the palace that she knew of, because she could ask around that she was Jew. She faced trial after trial in her life, but we see in every part of this story that there is hope that is woven through her story. God is always at work when we don't see the whole story. Even when things don't look so good and look uncertain. And that sets the stage for great things to happen. Mordecai would tell Esther in chapter 4, verse 14, it says, "And who knows that you may have come to this royal position for a time such as this." Every moment that we are awake and moving, whether we are interacting or if we're staying at home working on our computers and we're team chatting people, is an opportunity for God to use you and to be a blessing. Every moment, you guys. Every moment. Whether that you're here, whether you're out in the street, whether you're in the parking lot, you're at Savers or Cub or Hy-Vee or Target or Kohl's, wherever you are, or if you're in a team chat meeting, you have an opportunity for God to use you as a blessing to someone else for his glory. And we don't think about that. We don't think about every moment is an opportunity for God's glory to shine through us. God is the only one who has the power to turn trials into blessings. Everything we are to give God glory. Our whole purpose is to give God glory. So God will use everything for his glory. God's blessings are greater than our troubles. Always. His goodness will always, always shine through. It's just the way God works. Every day, every moment, God has us a place where he wants us to be. I'm going to say that again. Every day, every moment, God has us in a place where he wants us to be. How are we using that time and that moment? All right, I got to take a drink, you guys. I took a Claritin this morning. Otherwise, I'd be up here blowing my nose every 5 seconds like it was yesterday. All right, 2. Our prayers matter. Our voice matters. Our actions matter. And God is always our deliverer. We can choose to live life with grace and kindness. You can choose to stay involved, to have a voice, to be engaged, and to make a difference. But sometimes, like I felt yesterday, I didn't want to talk to no one. I came home and told my husband, I'm just tired. I do not want to engage with you. I love you, but I don't want to talk to you. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was just life and haven't felt good in the last month. Finally felt good later this week and yesterday. I had to get down on my knees and say, Lord, I don't know what's going on, but something needs to change because I'm tired of being tired and sick and tired. We have a God that hears our voice. When I went to bed last night, and I went to bed at 8 o'clock, guys, I prayed for an hour. Lord, give me rest. Please give me rest, Lord. I need to speak tomorrow. I need to be me. Because I didn't feel like me. But our voice matters, and God hears us every time. And I'm here this morning because I feel better. Because he is a God that hears us, listens to us, and delivers us. Mordecai knew his voice mattered. Esther knew that her actions mattered. And through wisdom and obedience of these two people, God saved the people. Mordecai, I believe that even if Esther, though, didn't help, I'm going to say that again. Mordecai knew that even if Esther didn't help, that God would still make a way. Because we can sometimes go, yeah, yeah, not interested, Lord. Or we go, okay, well, maybe if I just do this little thing. God's going, I've asked you to do a great big thing. You need to put yourself in the place and position to listen and to obey what I have given you. God would send a help in a different way, Mordecai, I thought. That's how much he trusted in the power of the Lord. He understood that our positions in life are not about us. Can I say that again? It's not about us. It's never, ever, ever about us. And we as humans always make it about us. We do, every time. What do I get out of this, Lord? What's in it for me? Now, we may not actually say those words, but a lot of times our actions do. Mordecai understood that our positions in life are not all about us, but only about a God that can do things and do those powerful things in places that we can't. Esther 4:14. This is Mordecai speaking to Esther. He says, "For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish." We don't always think about that part. When God asks us to do something and we choose not to, it doesn't work out the way we want things to or should work out in the best for us. God help us to be willing to pray and fast and wait. What? I have to wait? Wait for his direction and act on the wisdom he provides. May we be ever faithful for all those in authority, for those who need someone to speak up on their behalf, for those who are being pressed down or persecuted. May we be brave to speak with wisdom and discernment and to live days with hearts full of compassion and love. May we be strong enough to follow God's voice, even when it's not the most popular choice in culture. On Thursday in our leadership, we talked about culture. It is ever changing. It's so fast. What one thing today is good and the other thing is bad. And then tomorrow it's good and then the next day it's bad. We don't know. It's just crazy. But we need the glory of God to be manifested in us and not allow our ever-changing culture rule our actions, our beliefs, and our words. We need to stand firm on what the Word says and not be swayed by the things that are going on around us. Our prayers matter, our voice matters, our action matters, and God is our constant deliverer. Number 3, God gives us the courage to do all that he asks us to do. Obedience to his call is vital. It may even have the power to affect an entire generation of people as it did with Esther. We may never be fully aware of how our actions and I'm going to say this and I may step on some toes, but faithfulness, we may never be fully aware of how our actions and faithfulness are working so powerfully to those around us. Think about that. Our actions and faithfulness. We don't have to stay stuck in fear. We don't need to run from God's leaving, even when we feel incredibly unprepared or feel inadequate. God, you've asked me to, no, I have no idea what I'm doing. That's okay. None of us know what we're doing. How was your first day of your job that you started? Think way back when you first started your job. You had no clue what you were doing. And you probably even messed up, and your supervisor or manager had to go, yeah, that's not the way we do it here. Don't be afraid to get your feet wet. Don't be afraid to jump into the waters. If God has called you to do something, make yourself available. Jump in with all your feet. Well, I guess that would only be 2. But jump in. Don't be afraid. Esther had a choice. When Mordecai sent word to her about the great danger their people were facing, she could have simply went, yeah, well, I'm a queen. I'm good. She could have, because she was the queen. Her king thought she was beautiful and loved her. He wouldn't have done anything to her. He would have made sure she was saved. She could have kept quiet. She could have went, oh, well, let's just hope for the best. She could have even just turned away and went, yeah, that's just, I don't even want to think about that. That just seems like too big of a problem. I don't know. I don't even want to. But she and Mordecai both knew that God had given her great purpose in her position. You do not know where you're at today, how you will affect someone else. There was a lady, when my son was in Iraq the first time. It may have even been on a second tour. No, I'm pretty sure it was first tour. I worked for a company, and one of our trainers, she was a claims trainer, and her son at the same time that my son's in the Army. He's a captain in the Army now, but in the military police. He was a personal bodyguard for General Petraeus, if any of you followed the Iraq and Afghanistan tour. Her son was in the Navy at the time, and his ship was positioned in the Gulf of whatever it is out there. And she would come to me crying. She goes, Cheryl, I don't understand. How can you not be afraid for your son? And I wish I could remember her name. I can see her face. And I go, why? I have no reason to worry. I says, I have a God that I fully trust that will take care of him. And I says, besides, worrying does nothing. I says, except make you not sleep well and not want to watch TV. Because it was not a very fun war, guys. And I says, I've just given it to him. And she'd come back the following week if something happened in the news or whatever. Cheryl, I don't understand. And I'd go, it's okay. God has them. God's in control. I says, I cannot control my son. And afterwards, I found out a lot of things I definitely could not control my son. But God did, right? Every time. God does every time. So both Esther and Mordecai both knew that God had given her great purpose in her position. She was wise. She made a plan. She didn't stay stuck in worry or fear going, what if this doesn't work? Okay, what if? Because she could have gotten killed. That's the bottom line. She could have gotten killed. She prayed and she fasted and she asked for their people to do the same. She was willing to act and to follow God's lead and to save the lives of her people, even if it meant losing hers. Because if the king did not accept her when she went in without an appointment, he could have just said, nope, done, off with her head, be gone. Or go away, just like he did Vashti. Nope, she's done. Give me a new queen. Esther 4:15 through 16. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days and nights, and I and my maids will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, and even though it's against the law, and if I perish, I perish. The secret here is fasting, praying. We do not, in our lives, and I know I haven't, put enough emphasis on prayer and fasting. You want God's attention? You got something big before you? Fast and pray. Though our current situations can look a lot different than what Esther had to face, we still may be struggling with great fear and uncertainty. The future to us may look very dark and not very happy. Yet, God puts us in positions of influence or in strategic locations with great purpose in mind. Many times these places we find ourselves are not, as I said before, about us. It's about Him and His bigger plan. And that bigger plan, I want to throw this little nugget in your ears, may not be about us anyhow. It may be about Trish. It may be about Lee. It may be about Carol and Dwayne. It may not have anything to do with me at all. But yet I've been put in a position where I need to make sure that I am praying and fasting and being in that place of encouragement, because that may be what I'm used for. It doesn't have to be some great lofty thing, you guys. You just may be there for encouragement. Number 4, God is able to bring great favor and blessings on our lives, even in hard places. Often when God does, we are certain to feel animosity from others. If we're living like salt and light in the dark world, we can be assured that there will be attacks against us. We will face struggles and battles sometimes we didn't even see coming. But in all, there is this amazing protection that God gives us and a covering of God's favor and blessings, even though we may not even realize it or see it. From the moment Esther was in King's palace, she was given protection and favor. The Bible says that she won the favor of all of those that she was around. God blessed her greatly and allowed her to be queen. That's important because without this great favor, Esther would have never been able to do what she did. If she had just been a stingy old crabby queen, she would not have been able to do what she did. On the third day in Esther chapter 5, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the palace in front of the king's hall. When he saw Queen Esther standing in court, he was pleased with her, held out to her the gold scepter that was in his hand. So Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. And when the king asked, "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? For even up to half the kingdom, it will be given you." Because of this great favor, Esther was allowed to carry out a plan that would save her people. The king was willing to come to a banquet prepared for him. Remember Haman, that lovely guy? And the king. Not just once, but the queen asked them twice, and both times the king came without any hesitation. The purposes of God were being set. Haman would meet his demise, and the Jews would be saved. But when we belong to God, we have protection that this world does not understand. They cannot understand, why are you going through this and it's just crumbling around you. You're like, it's okay. I got God. He's good all the time. It doesn't mean we won't face trials. No. If you think that, you need to get back into reading your Bible. Because I don't know if there's anyone that ever not escaped a trial of some sort. We surely will, but when we do, we know that God's strength and blessing is even stronger. Number 5, God will always be faithful to lead us and to fight on our behalf. He is forever faithful, and the story of Esther is a great testimony of God's faithfulness. Sometimes God tells us to wait. How many of you ever trained a puppy to sit and to wait? Yeah, it's very hard for them. I remember Max, we have a pit bull, and he would sit there and he would wiggle his butt, trying to sit still. You're like, sit, just sit, sit. Other times, God will say to move quickly. We must be so in tune with his leadership and his spirit that we need to recognize what he is saying to us. But his timing is perfect all the time, even when it's our timing. So, timing. Some of you are Facebook friends. So my husband had his 60th birthday a couple weekends ago, and my husband had no clue whatsoever that A, our son was flying into town, and B, that I had a party for him, because I kept telling him that we were going to Tony's party. And so he knows Tony Welsh, right? So he didn't even ask. He just assumed that it was for Tony Welsh. Tony's Welsh birthday, by the way, is in October, for all of you who want to remember that. Not in February. But timing was impeccable for picking up my son, because I had... So luckily, thank you, Lord, that we had ladies' night that Friday. And so I came to ladies' night. I told my husband, hey, I'm going to stay afterwards and help Kimmy Welsh clean up a little bit, because I didn't want him to know my son's flight wasn't coming until 10:30 at night. I couldn't go home and leave again, because then he would be very, very suspicious. My son called me at 10 to 10. Hey, my flight got in early. I'm like, son, you're more than a half hour early. Timing's not good. But God's timing is perfect every time. And even when we're caught off guard, God is still there. God is at work, often in ways we can't fully see. His timing is laying out every crucial detail. Details, you guys. Some of us with personalities miss out on the details. We don't like the details. God's working on the details for those of you who don't like the details. He's got it taken care of for you. It's never haphazard or thrown together. It is intricately woven into the stories and purposes of our lives. As Queen Esther and Mordecai moved through these crucial days and worked on behalf of their people, every plan was carefully timed, and each purpose was carried out for the glory of God, not for themselves, but for the glory of God. And in the end, the tables were turned, and those who were plotting against the Jews were destroyed. In Esther 9:2, it says, no one could stand against them, that was the Jews, because the people of all other nationalities were afraid of them. The plan to kill the Jews had been stopped, and there was a great fear of God all around. God's reputation became known throughout the land, even to the point in Esther 8:17, it says, many people of other nationalities even became Jews because of the fear of the Jews had seized them. With God, our enemies will flee and be destroyed. His power can never be thwarted or destroyed. He is with us, guiding us, carrying us, and covering us front to back, side to side. God, help us to follow his lead, believing that his timing is perfect. And remember that he's always faithful. Do not let your guard down, because know that God is faithful to us. And when he helps us to know when to keep our mouths shut and wait, and when to speak out on the behalf of others in sharing his truth. He won't leave us on our own to fend for ourselves in difficult situations and places. His power can only help us and come to our rescue. His faithfulness and mercies are new each and every day. 6, pride is a trap. We're going to get back to Haman a little bit. Humility is a key. There is a huge lesson in the story of Esther. Pride will lead to our demise. Every character through this book had to decide whether they are going to live with pride or humility. Those who chose pride faced a defeat. Those who walked with humility and integrity before God rose above every hard circumstance. By the time Mordecai told Esther about the evil plot against the Jews, Esther was queen. She could have turned her back on her people. She could have been proud and thought, yes, I am the queen, and be happy with her success and her power, but she did the opposite. She was willing to look after the needs of others before herself and not think too highly. Haman chose the opposite. He devised a plan that would ultimately make himself look better and destroy the people who wouldn't bend a knee to him. He was proud, he was selfish, and he was full of hate. Ultimately, it would be that would destroy him. It's amazing how God used every bit of Haman's plan to turn it back on Haman, on himself. The Jews were saved, and Mordecai was given the honor. The last verse of the book reads, Mordecai, this is Esther 10:3, says, Mordecai the Jew was second in rank to King Xerxes, or King Heros, preeminent among the Jews and held in high esteem by many fellow Jews because he worked for the good of the people and spoke up on the welfare of all the Jews. Whatever places of leadership that we are put in or positions of authority God has given us, one thing is true. It is never, ever, ever to be about us. Every part of our lives should point ultimately to who God is and to his truth and how worthy he is. And we must decide sometimes every second, will I take pride in my life, in my accomplishments, or what God has blessed me with? Mordecai and Esther knew the key, less of me, more of him. Their willingness to live humbly before God allowed God to work purposefully in saving and touching others. My last one. God is sovereign over all, and he lovingly cares for us. If you find yourself facing trouble or testing, be assured that God is at work in your situation. He's working within you and for you on your behalf in all the events that surround you, no matter how difficult. And whatever we face, we need to know and get this in our head that God is still on the throne and in control. No matter how crazy this world gets around us. Let's take it out of personal. Let's go global. No matter how crazy this world goes, it's election year, people. It is going to get ugly. But God is still in control. He knows already who's going to be our president in 2025 and 1-1 or whatever the election is, November. God already knows. He already knows. So just get it in your heads, people. He already knows. He's in control. He is powerful and nothing is too difficult for him. He cares about us. He loves us. He knows everything about us. Though you may think that no one understands, God does. God is sovereign. He reigns over all, and nothing takes him by surprise. We never read about God not knowing what to do. He's not in heaven going, oh, I don't know. This is, oh, I don't know, people. I don't, I. God will never, ever, ever, ever do that. He knows far in advance. He knows the next step that you're going to take. Light is greater than darkness, and every time it is. It is the only way to wade through our difficult things. Walk in the power of his sovereignty and in his light. Keep your eyes on Jesus. He will not fail you or leave you to struggle on your own. He is faithful to turn everything for his greater purpose. He will never fail. Believe that he is at work right now for you and that he is setting the stage for greater things. God reigns, and he is with us today and forever. Great leaders must have strong personal integrity and willingness to commit to what is most important. And perhaps all else, great leaders must know how to inspire people and lead them to Christ. So here is our greatest leader of all, of course, Jesus Christ, which, if we follow Christ, those characteristics of integrity, willingness to commit to what is most important in God's kingdom, putting others before ourselves, and to have that relationship with Christ. Whatever you are, both physically in life or in a season in life, know that you are in a place of purpose. You are here for a purpose today. We all came to learn something because we know this is where we should be, but you have a purpose today as well. A purpose to encourage, to believe that God is our all sovereign and mighty, and that he can do all things for his glory and not for ourselves. His grace is sufficient to see us in any time. Let's stand. God, you are an awesome God, and I'm so thankful that you are real, and that you are stable, and that you are faithful, that you do not fret